Welcome back to the channel. Today, we turn our attention to one of the most sensitive and fast evolving developments in the Middle East. A potential confrontation between Saudi Arabia and Israel is brewing, one that is no longer dismissed as impossible. Missiles, tanks, and drones are now central to military calculations. What was once whispered in diplomatic circles is now openly discussed on news networks and in defense forums. The idea that Riyadh and Tel Aviv could find themselves in direct conflict has gone from speculation to a looming possibility. To understand why this clash is gaining momentum, we must look at the long and complex history between the two nations. For decades, Saudi Arabia and Israel were sworn enemies. After Israel's establishment in 1948, Riyadh aligned itself with the Palestinian cause and used its influence in the Arab world to isolate Israel diplomatically. The 1967 and 1973 wars further hardened hostility. Saudi Arabia even led the oil embargo of the early 1970s in solidarity with Arab states against Israel. For Israel, Saudi Arabia represented the financial and political weight of Arab resistance. But history never stands still. In 1979, Iran's Islamic Revolution sent shockwaves across the region. Suddenly, Saudi Arabia and Israel found themselves facing a common rival. Iran's ambition to expand its influence across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen meant Riyadh and Tel Aviv began looking at each other differently. Though they never became formal allies, intelligence sharing and quiet contacts became more frequent. Both nations opposed Iran's nuclear program. Both felt threatened by Tehran's growing influence. By the mid-2000s, analysts speculated that Saudi Arabia and Israel were cooperating more than anyone admitted. This set the stage for the Abraham Accords of 2020. Israel normalized relations with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. Many believed Saudi Arabia would soon follow. Yet Riyadh hesitated. The Palestinian question remained unresolved. Public opinion in Saudi Arabia could not easily accept normalization while Palestinians lived under occupation. At the same time, Saudi leaders were wary of being seen as too close to Israel without concrete progress on Palestinian statehood. That hesitation created mistrust. Over time, relations began to cool. Fast forward to the present. Riyadh is frustrated with what it sees as Israel's unwillingness to engage meaningfully on the Palestinian issue. Israel is concerned about Saudi Arabia's growing ties with China and Russia, as well as its ambitious military modernization program. The once quiet understanding has turned into suspicion. Both sides are now openly preparing for worst-case scenarios. Missiles, tanks, and drones define this potential clash. Israel has one of the most sophisticated missile defense systems in the world. The Iron Dome intercepts short-range rockets. David's Sling and the Arrow system provide protection against medium and long-range ballistic missiles. Israel also possesses offensive missile capabilities that can strike deep into enemy territory with precision. Saudi Arabia has invested billions in its air force and ground forces. It operates advanced fighter jets and European Typhoons. More importantly, it is building its own drone program, often with Chinese assistance. The kingdom is also believed to be enhancing its ballistic missile stockpile. A war between Saudi Arabia and Israel would not resemble older conflicts in the region. It would not be limited to tank battles across deserts or dogfights over skies. The modern battlefield would be a mix of drone swarms, cyber operations, and long-range precision strikes. Saudi Arabia has reorganized its ground forces, maintaining tanks and armored divisions that can rapidly secure territory. Israel continues to rely on its Merkava tanks, which have been tested in Lebanon and Gaza. Yet both militaries know that tanks without air superiority are vulnerable. This is where Israel's air force remains unmatched, with decades of combat experience and technological edge. The danger is that deterrence can quickly spiral into conflict. Both sides may intend to flex their muscles without crossing red lines. But in such tense environments, miscalculations happen. A drone mistakenly entering another's airspace. A missile misfire. A strike that kills civilians. These are the sparks that can ignite wars. Once blood is shed, it becomes politically difficult for leaders to step back. Proxy groups add another layer of complexity. Saudi Arabia has been under repeated attack from Houthi rebels in Yemen. These rebels, supported by Iran, have launched missiles and drones at Saudi oil facilities. If Riyadh enters conflict with Israel, the Houthis may escalate further. Hezbollah in Lebanon could also join the fray against Israel, calculating that both Tel Aviv and Riyadh would be stretched thin. Militias in Iraq, often tied to Iran, could disrupt shipping routes or strike Saudi and Israeli interests abroad. The region is already a web of proxy conflicts. A Saudi-Israeli confrontation could trigger a chain reaction. The global dimension is equally important. The United States has been both Israel's strongest ally and Saudi Arabia's long-time protector. But Washington now faces an impossible dilemma. If war erupts between these two partners, which side does it support? Choosing one risks alienating the other. Attempting neutrality risks losing credibility with both. Russia and China are watching closely. Moscow could exploit the chaos by offering arms or diplomatic support. Beijing has massive economic stakes in both Saudi Arabia and Israel and will seek stability, but it also enjoys watching the U.S. struggle to manage yet another Middle Eastern crisis. Iran, meanwhile, would welcome a war that weakens both of its regional rivals. Energy markets are perhaps the most vulnerable. Saudi Arabia remains the largest oil exporter in the world. Even the perception of instability raises oil prices. A few successful strikes on Saudi oil infrastructure would cause prices to skyrocket. Global shipping lanes through the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz could be disrupted. Israel too sits near key Mediterranean trade routes, and conflict there would rattle European energy imports. The economic consequences of a clash would be global. Inside Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has tied his reputation to Vision 2030. This ambitious plan aims to diversify the economy, reduce reliance on oil, and create futuristic megaprojects like the Neom City. But Vision 2030 depends on stability. Investors will not commit billions into a country at war. A clash with Israel would stall these plans and weaken Riyadh's modernization drive. Inside Israel, politics are deeply divided. Protests and controversies have rocked the government. But history shows that when external threats loom, Israelis rally together. Leaders in Tel Aviv may even use the prospect of Saudi aggression to foster national unity. Yet the economic costs of prolonged conflict would be significant. Israel's high-tech sector thrives on global investment and trade. War would scare away investors, disrupt supply chains, and slow innovation. The humanitarian cost cannot be ignored. Millions of civilians live under the shadow of these weapons. Families in Riyadh, Jeddah, Haifa, and Tel Aviv fear what open conflict would mean. Air raids, missile strikes, and drone attacks would not only damage infrastructure, but also claim innocent lives. Hospitals, schools, and homes would be at risk. Refugee flows could emerge, straining neighboring countries. Humanitarian agencies warn that the scale of suffering could rival previous regional wars. Cyber warfare would play a key role. Israel has long been a leader in cyber capabilities. Saudi Arabia, too, has been investing heavily in its digital defenses and offensive potential. In a clash, cyber attacks could target banks, airports, power grids, and media outlets. Information warfare could shape public opinion, spreading fear and misinformation. The digital front would be as critical as the physical battlefield. Diplomacy is still alive, though fragile. American, European, and even Chinese envoys are quietly urging restraint. Back-channel negotiations may be happening, though both Riyadh and Tel Aviv deny any concessions. History shows that the Middle East has often come close to war, only to pull back at the last moment. Whether this is another such moment remains uncertain. Possible scenarios range from limited strikes to full-scale war. In a limited conflict, Israel might target Saudi missile sites. Saudi Arabia could respond with strikes on Israeli infrastructure. Such a conflict could last days or weeks before mediation. In a proxy escalation, Houthis or Hezbollah might increase attacks, while Saudi and Israeli forces avoid direct clashes. The nightmare scenario is a full-scale war. Air battles, missile strikes, cyber attacks, and naval clashes disrupting oil exports and global shipping. This would be devastating for the region and the world. Regional players would face immense pressure. Egypt and Jordan, both with peace treaties with Israel, would be in difficult positions. The Gulf states, particularly the UAE and Bahrain, would face pressure to choose sides despite their normalization with Israel. Turkey might try to exploit the crisis to enhance its influence. Iran would certainly take every opportunity to inflame the conflict, providing weapons to proxies and encouraging wider escalation. Economically, the damage would be catastrophic. Oil prices could double or triple in days. Stock markets would plunge. Investors would flee. Both Saudi Arabia and Israel would see years of progress erased in weeks. The ripple effects across global markets would affect ordinary people from Europe to Asia to the Americas. And yet, despite this grim picture, war is not inevitable. Both Saudi and Israeli leaders are aware of the immense costs. Riyadh knows Vision 2030 could collapse if war breaks out. Israel knows prolonged conflict would weaken its economy and political stability. This is why many analysts still believe that we are witnessing a dangerous game of deterrence rather than preparation for imminent war. But the danger lies in miscalculation. Wars in the Middle East often begin not with deliberate planning, but with accidents, misinterpretations, and rash responses. As the situation develops, the world watches every move, every drone spotted, every missile test, every statement from leaders. The Middle East once again stands at a crossroads. The choices made in the coming months will shape the future of millions. Missiles, tanks, and drones dominate the headlines, but behind the weapons are real people hoping their leaders will avoid yet another devastating war. This has been a deep dive into the brewing clash between Saudi Arabia and Israel. We will continue to monitor developments and provide updates as they unfold. The stakes are high and the outcome uncertain. For now, this is the story shaping the future of the Middle East and the world. So stay tuned. Come back to the channel and like, share, subscribe the channel.